Forget what you think you know about history, because the food on ancient tables will shock you. From meals fit for kings to survival diets that sound unthinkable today. What did ancient civilizations really eat? Chapter 1. Introduction. Food as the foundation of civilization. Food isn't just about staying alive. For ancient civilizations, it was the heart of culture, religion, and power. Surplus food built cities. Scarcity destroyed them. And what people ate shaped the very rise and fall of empires. Across the world, different landscapes created different diets. In fertile river valleys, people grew grains. In harsher lands, they turned to herding or trade. Bread, beer, rice, maize, these weren't just meals. They were lifelines. Archaeologists have uncovered burned grains in fire pits, painted banquets on tomb walls, even clay tablets with the world's first recipes. These finds give us an intimate glimpse of what ancient people ate day to day. In this journey, we'll taste our way through history. From Mesopotamia's barley and beer to Egypt's feasts, Greece's simple meals, and Rome's extravagant banquets. We'll travel east to China's rice fields and India's spice markets. We'll cross oceans to explore the sacred maize of the Americas and the grains of Africa. So, what did ancient civilizations really eat? To find out, we begin at the cradle of cities, the land between two rivers, Mesopotamia. Chapter 2. Mesopotamia. Bread, beer, and barley. Mesopotamia, the so-called cradle of civilization, also gave us some of the world's first recipes. And at the heart of their diet, barley. Barley became bread, the food of the people. It also became beer, the drink of choice for everyone, from farmers to kings. But don't picture a golden pint with foam. Mesopotamian beer was thick, like porridge, and sipped through straws to avoid floating grain. Alongside bread and beer were onions, lentils, garlic, and dates. Meat came from sheep and goats, with fish from rivers. Herbs like cumin and coriander flavored stews. Rich, hearty dishes described on 4,000-year-old clay tablets. But food wasn't just eaten. It was sacred. Offerings of bread and beer were given to the gods. Feasts displayed wealth and power. And just like in many later empires, food marked social class. Ordinary people survived on bread and beer. The wealthy dined on meat and more elaborate stews. It was in Mesopotamia that cooking shifted from survival to culture. Meals became moments of meaning. Next, we move west to the Nile, where food became a symbol of life, and even the afterlife. Chapter 3. Ancient Egypt. Feasting by the Nile. The Nile didn't just give water, it gave Egypt food year after year. And with that abundance came a cuisine as rich as the river itself. Like Mesopotamia, Egyptians lived on bread and beer. Workers on the pyramids were actually paid in rations of both. Bread came in many shapes. Flatbreads, loaves, even sweet versions with honey and dates. Beer was thick, filling, and safer to drink than river water. Vegetables made up the bulk of daily meals. Onions, garlic, and leeks weren't just food. They were medicine and even offerings to the gods. Fish from the Nile fed common families, while the wealthy enjoyed beef, lamb, geese, and ducks. Honey, figs, grapes, and pomegranates added sweetness to elite tables. But food in Egypt had another purpose: preparing for eternity. Tombs show paintings of banquets, and offerings of bread, meat, and wine were buried with the dead. The idea was simple. If food sustained life on earth, it must also sustain the soul in the afterlife. For everyday Egyptians, meals were simple yet nourishing. For the elite, they were grand and symbolic. Together, they reveal a culture where food meant survival, celebration, and immortality. From the abundance of the Nile, we now sail to Greece, where food was simpler, but ideas about it would shape Western philosophy. Chapter 4. Greece. Simple foods, big ideas. In ancient Greece, meals were simple. The land was rocky, the soil limited, and abundance was rare. But out of this simplicity came some of the most influential food traditions in history. At the core was the Mediterranean triad: bread, olives, and wine. Bread made from barley or wheat was eaten daily. Olives were pressed into golden oil, used in cooking, trade, and even religious rituals. And wine, often watered down, fueled social gatherings called symposiums, where philosophy, politics, and poetry flowed as freely as the drink itself. Meat was rare. Most Greeks ate fish, seafood, cheese, figs, and vegetables. Goats and sheep provided milk and cheese, but beef or pork was usually reserved for sacrifices and festivals. For ordinary people, meals were modest but filling. For Greeks, food was more than fuel. It was tied to health, balance, and moderation. Thinkers like Hippocrates argued, "Let food be thy medicine." Meals reflected this idea: nourishment without excess, simplicity without waste. Feasts did exist, of course. Elites displayed wealth at banquets, but even then, the focus wasn't indulgence. It was conversation, ideas, and community. If Greek meals were about moderation, Rome would take that model and turn it into something else entirely: a grand performance of power and luxury. Chapter 5. Rome, Empire on a Plate. Rome began humbly, with simple meals of porridge, bread, beans, and wine. Soldiers and farmers lived on these staples, cheap and practical. But as Rome's empire grew, so did its appetite. Trade brought in spices from India, dates from Africa, oysters from Britain. Food became a way to show power. At the center of Roman flavor was garum, a fermented fish sauce used in almost everything. For common people, it seasoned basic meals. For the wealthy, it flavored elaborate feasts. And those feasts were spectacles. Multi-course banquets stretched for hours. Dishes included roasted boar, stuffed dormice, peacocks, and even flamingo tongues. Dining was entertainment, theater, and politics rolled into one. But food wasn't just pleasure. It was control. Emperors gave out free grain rations, the annona, to keep the people fed and loyal. Bread, and the famous bread and circuses, maintained order in the empire. Still, beneath the luxury of the elite, Rome's backbone remained simple: bread, olive oil, wine, and legumes. These sustained armies, workers, and families across a vast empire. From Rome's indulgence, we now travel east, where China perfected a diet built not on extravagance, but on balance and harmony. Chapter 6. China, rice, tea, and the balance of yin-yang. In ancient China, food was more than nourishment. It was philosophy, medicine, and identity. Geography divided the diet. In the north, millet and wheat dominated. In the south, rice became life itself. To this day, the word for rice in Chinese also means meal. That's how central it was. Soybeans added another cornerstone. From them came soy sauce, tofu, and pastes that flavored countless dishes. Vegetables like cabbage, radishes, and bamboo shoots rounded out meals. Meat, pork, chicken, or fish was eaten when available, but rarely in large amounts. Tea, at first a medicinal drink, became a cultural treasure. Its role grew from health to art, embodying harmony and refinement. Underlying it all was the idea of yin and yang. Foods were classified as hot or cold, light or heavy. Meals balanced these forces to maintain health and inner harmony. For common people, meals were simple: rice gruel, noodles, pickled vegetables. For emperors, banquets featured exotic game, rare fruits, and intricate presentations. But whether rich or poor, Chinese food philosophy emphasized balance over excess. From China's harmony, we turn to India, where food became not just balance, but bold expression, guided by spice, ritual, and devotion. Chapter 7. Ancient India, Spices, Rice, and Sacred Foods. India's ancient kitchens overflowed with flavor. At the center were rice, wheat, and lentils, the backbone of daily meals. Simple, nourishing, and filling. But what made Indian food unique were its spices. Black pepper, turmeric, cardamom, and cloves didn't just taste good. They healed, cleansed, and carried sacred meaning. Archaeologists have found turmeric and ginger in Indus Valley sites over 4,000 years old. That's how deep the tradition runs. Dairy also played a sacred role. Milk, yogurt, and ghee, clarified butter, were both food and offering. In Hindu rituals, ghee was poured into fire for the gods. Vegetarianism grew strong here, rooted in philosophies of nonviolence from Jainism, Buddhism, and Hinduism. Even when meat was eaten, it was often linked to ritual rather than indulgence. Meals connected body and spirit. Ayurveda, India's ancient science of health, prescribed foods to balance energies, heal sickness, and promote longevity. Food wasn't just eaten, it was medicine, ritual, and devotion all at once. From India's spice-rich meals, we now cross oceans to the Americas, where another sacred crop, maize, fed empires and shaped mythology. Chapter 8. The Americas, Maize, Cacao, and Sacred Corn. In the ancient Americas, maize was life. For the Maya, Aztec, and Inca, it wasn't just food, it was identity. Myths even said humans were made from corn dough. Maize, beans, and squash, the three sisters, were grown together, eaten together, and sustained whole civilizations. Balanced, nourishing, and adaptable. But the Americas also gave us cacao. Not the sweet chocolate we know today, but a bitter, frothy drink spiced with chili or honey. Warriors and elites drank it. Cacao beans were so valuable they served as money. In the Andes, the Inca relied on potatoes and quinoa. Potatoes were ingenious. Grown at high altitudes, stored as freeze-dried chuno that could last years. For drink, they had chicha, fermented corn beer, used in rituals and celebrations. Protein came from turkeys, guinea pigs, llamas, and fish. But like elsewhere, plants remained the backbone of survival. Everywhere food was sacred. Cornfields were blessed. Cacao was offered in rituals. Feasts bound communities together. In the Americas, food wasn't just survival. It was spirit, currency, and culture. From Chapter 9. Conclusion. What we can learn from ancient diets. So, what did ancient civilizations really eat? Grains, legumes, vegetables, and fruits. Simple staples, often humble, but also sacred foods, festival feasts, and flavors that still live on today. Common threads run through them all. Grains formed the backbone. Meals were seasonal and local. Food was tied to ritual, politics, and power. But differences remind us of human creativity. Rome turned meals into theater. China sought balance in every bite. India spiced food into medicine and devotion. The Americas built empires on corn. Africa celebrated resilience through millet and yams. For ordinary people, meals were modest. For the elite, they could be extravagant. But in every case, food reflected culture, identity, and survival. What can we learn? That ancient diets were often more sustainable than ours. They relied on plants, local harvests, and balance. They saw food not just as fuel, but as medicine, ritual, and community. So the next time you eat bread, rice, or corn, remember, you're tasting history. A legacy thousands of years old, passed down from the very first civilizations. Food is more than survival. It's the story of us.